Hey guys, Aaron here. I have my Rio Toro Morpheus case behind me as well as a bunch of the PC components, and today I'm finally going to build the internals of this thing. So let's get started. So here is the beautiful Rio Toro Morpheus case. If you haven't seen the video on that one, I show you how to build it. You can check out the link right here and I'll put it in the description, as well as the discount code right here that you can use to save some money on this or anything that Rio Toro sells. And I also happened to get their ATX power supply. I'm going to be installing this GPU right here. We've got my CPU, we have an SSD drive, a little SATA cable for that, and some RAM. And this is the motherboard that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to start out by taking this out of the box, and don't forget to look under it for some more goodies. This is the beautiful motherboard. This motherboard has a little plastic protective thing on here that tells you to remove it. So to do that, you can just open the little lever here, press it down, slide it out, and this will come right off. All right, and this actually shows you the little triangle is in this corner. And also on here, it shows you that the triangle is in this corner. The manual that comes with our motherboard tells us that this is an ATX form factor and it's an Intel chipset. And this is our 10th gen Intel Core processor. Here's a little of the info on it. This packaging has the actual CPU right here and then the cooling for it. So I'm going to remove the chip from the packaging without touching the top or the bottom. Just hold it from the sides and you can see that the little triangle cutout is right here. And you got to match that with the triangle cutout down here. And I'm just going to very gently set it into place. I'm not going to push on it. Gravity will put it in there. I'm going to close this little lid and you can see that this part here tucks under this screw. So when you press the lever down, it holds the chip into place. From here on the top and also right there. All right, next I'm gonna install the RAM memory sticks. You can see there are 4 DDR4 slots available. And on most motherboards, you can see down here, there is a little chart for it. A1, A2, B1, and B2 are the orders. So A1 is the closest one over here, A2, B1, B2. And if you're only installing 2 of them, it's kind of counterintuitive, but they go into A2 and B2. If you're installing 4, of course, just fill all 4 up, and they do have to be the same type of memory. All right, so it's just the tabs on this side that you open, and then we're gonna take the memory sticks and just press them down into this channel, and you can see that there is a little notch here, so this side is longer than this side, so you can't put them in backwards. So you can see if I were to try to put it in that way, the notch would not line up. So they go this way. Gonna make sure that one is seated all the way down there in the channel, and then press it down carefully so you don't snap it. And press this. And once it's all the way in, you can snap that back in and just check to make sure that all of the little teeth down there are seated. And go ahead and do the same thing for your second one. Next up, I'm going to install the stock Intel cooler that came with our chip. It has thermal paste on it already. If yours does not, you need to apply some thermal paste to the back of your CPU there before proceeding. Now, this has 4 little feet that fall into the 4 little holes around the CPU, and this can only go in 2 directions. So it can go in either way, it doesn't matter as long as you have clearance around everything. Now this cable you will be plugging into the motherboard, and there's usually something labeled CPU_fan, and you can see there's a CPU_fan 1 here. This motherboard has another CPU_fan 2 over there in case you want 2 fans. So for me, I just dropped this on here. Looks like this orientation will work well, giving me the reach of this to plug it into there. And I guess some of these have actual screws on them, but these you just push in and twist. There's a little arrow indicating which way to turn it to lock it on. So you can start by just pressing them in. They will lock, snap in. And then you want to tighten them in opposite corners. So here, 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 here. All right, so I just rotated it a little bit and it's now locked, it will not come up. Press down, rotate. Keys locked down. All right, all four corners are in, and then you can plug this in. It'll force you to put it in one direction. All right, cable connected. All right, after some changing around, I actually decided to run the cable this way just to make sure it's not going to interfere with the fan. Plugged in right there. All right, I think we're ready to install the motherboard I/O shield that came with the motherboard. So here's the beauty of the Morpheus. I'm just going to unscrew these 4 thumb screws to remove the side. Ta-da! Now we can see the rectangular cutout where that motherboard I/O cover goes. So I'm just going to line it up to see where it's going to go on the motherboard. And it's time to carefully cut off these from all the corners so that we can remove the padding. So for me, these are going to be at the bottom. I'll snap this into place. So I just went ahead and laid the case down on its side. Move these cords out of the way. And we're going to drop the motherboard in here. So you can see that the standoffs for the motherboard are already installed here in the case. So it looks like my Morpheus case is missing 2 standoffs right here, but it came with some in the packaging originally, so I'm gonna screw them in there. There we go, problem solved, and these are of course what your motherboard gets screwed into, so you gotta make sure they're there. One for each of these holes around your motherboard. I just gently lowered the motherboard in, trying to line up these things over here. And you can see one of these, as I press it in a little bit more, will drop in to that notch right there to lock it into place. I'm just going to take the screws provided with the case and attach them to all of those posts. And if everything is lined up correctly, all of your peripherals should be able to plug into this or through the shield here. So I'm just using these screws that came with the case and a Phillips screwdriver to tighten them down to the posts everywhere where you see a hole in the motherboard. All right, let's move on to the power supply. This is a fully modular one, meaning that all of the cables are going to be disconnected. If you have a non-modular one, all the cables will already be hooked up to this unit. So here's our main power cable. And this bag here should have all of the individual cables. Yep, we got 2 bags full of cables. And finally, the power supply itself. Beautiful packaging, as always, from Rio Toro. So this is the unit. You can see the main power supply there and the switch. And on the back, this is where the modularity comes in. You can plug in the power cables for each of these items individually. And on all these cables, it's labeled which end goes into what and which end goes into the power supply. So you got a couple double CPU power supply. So we're gonna start over here with our largest cable. This one is the 24-pin ATX cable that's gonna provide power to the whole board. Next important one is this one labeled CPU, and usually they split apart. Some people call it the 8-pin EPS cable, and that's the one that provides power to your CPU. The other end of the big one looks like this, and there's only one place on the back of the power supply where that fits, and it's gonna go right here in the motherboard slot. And there it is, connected. Third cable we'll need is labeled PCIe, and it's usually split into 2 8-pin connectors. So this is going to power the graphics card, and it depends. You got to look on the back of your graphics card to see how much it takes. Other end goes to the power supply. So here's the power on my graphics card. You can see that it uses one 8-pin and one 6-pin. So That's why this one is split like this in case you need a 6-pin. Now in our other package, we have some cables like this. So this one here is a Molex connector, they call it. And here is our SATA cable. So we're gonna need a SATA power to power up our SATA hard drive. So for our CPU cable, this power supply has 4 8-pins that all say either CPU or PCIe, so you can use any of them. Some power supplies might label this as EPS or 4+4 CPU. So again, here's our CPU cable, and you're gonna take the one labeled PSU and plug that into the power supply side. And snap it in. And our SATA cables are gonna go down here in these 6-pin connectors where it says peripheral and SATA. And also if you needed a Molex connection, it would go down here as well. So the other end of our GPU is labeled here, and it's just gonna go in my bottom corner. I plug my SATA cable in here, and it's probably obvious, but it has a lot of connectors on it, so you can use any of these and you can power several SATA devices from one cable. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and install the power supply in the case. So now we're going to come around to the back, and this is where it's gonna end up. So I'm just gonna use the 4 thumb screws on this side and remove this piece. So with that removed, easy access. So you can see the bottom of our motherboard here, and you're gonna wanna make sure you point the fan on this case to the outside so it gets its ventilation through here. So just set it in here. There's a nice little shelf that it sits on and aligns these 4 holes perfectly. So use the 4 screws that came with the power supply to attach it. This is the bag from the power supply. There's our 4 screws, and we got some zip ties and Velcro tie straps in there as well. And here's the final screw going in. Now I'm gonna install my SATA SSD, take this out of the box. The Morpheus has a lot of hard drive storage bays here, and it's got some SSD ones at the top. So I'm just gonna pinch this little plastic clip, pull the tray out. Follow the directions by removing this. Gonna make sure the place where we have to plug things in is sticking out to the back. Drop it on here, and I'm gonna use 4 screws, line these up and attach it to the tray. These trays have 2 little notches on the side, and your SSD should have 2 little holes on the side that slide into them. Now it's locked into place and won't move, and your holes will be lined up. Just using these little screws that came with the Morpheus case, and we're gonna attach the SSD drive to the tray. With our case installed, I can take my SATA cable now and connect it to the small one, and I'm gonna take the power and connect the power to the larger one. As you look down, you can see that there's like a little tab here, so it's L-shaped, and your connector here is gonna have an L kind of shape on it as well, so you know that it can only go in on one direction. So I'll just slide this in and attach the power. Now we can slide this back into place. Right up here and lock them in. Okay, now our SATA cable coming out of here, we can see that there are some holes in the top. You can either go around this way or right through this hole. And that cable is gonna come out right here, and we can see that we have our 2 SATA connectors right here on the motherboard, or there are also 4 of them in here. But this is nice and convenient. So I'll just connect my right angle one right into there. All right, I'm gonna work on plugging in the cables that come out of the case right now. So go ahead and unbundle these and find the one that looks like this. Sometimes the very end of it is blue. It's the one that is your USB 3 connectors on the front of the case. In my particular case, it is on the side of the case over here, right above that big power connector. And if you zoom in, you should be able to see it say USB 3 somewhere on it. Just snap it in firmly. It only goes in one direction because there is a tab over there, like all of the connectors. All right, there are 2 cables that say USB 3.1 on them. So in the case, we have these USB Type-C and then regular USB 3 ports. And one of those cables can fit right here into the connector right above that, which says it's a Type-C USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 header. So I'm gonna have to leave the second one of these disconnected unless I want to buy something that can plug into here and then have two connections for me. I'll probably look for one of those and add that to the description of this video in case you guys wanna buy one. Next up out of the case, we have this HD audio, and on our motherboard here, it goes into the top right. And you can see that there's one pin blocked off and there is one pin missing from up there, so you know which direction to plug it in. And there we have it connected, and you can see it says HD audio. All right, I'm gonna try to connect the cooling fans now, and these are 3-pin connectors on here. And we have some 4-pin connectors in the case. So if you're connecting a 3-pin, it says to make sure you connect them to pins 1, 2, and 3, which I believe they are the 3 on the furthest to the left. So these 3 here. So you can see the little block on the bottom. That's what the little tabs on the connector are gonna go around. All right, so there you can see the 3 wires going in. It's plugged in. All right, for the fan over here on this side, there's the connector on my motherboard for that one right here. Also a 3-pin, and then this top fan is gonna connect up into the top left corner, just like that. And if you decided to add one additional fan, there's one more spot up here where you can plug it in. All right, now we're gonna figure out where all of these little guys go. On this motherboard, they connect to what they call the system panel header. So just look at this diagram that comes with your motherboard, and it will show you the hard drive LED positive and negative on the bottom, the power LED plus and minus on the top, etc. And on this motherboard, it is right up here under the fan header where those connectors are. So I'm gonna start with this hard drive LED plus. It's gonna go into the top right corner here. This power LED plus is gonna go on the bottom right corner. So I put the power button on the bottom 2 to the left, and then the reset, I put them right above them, and I left that last pin empty because it doesn't really specify. It just says ground around the resets, and the reset has 2 pins. So we'll see if that works. Now I'm gonna start connecting the cables from the power supply, and you can see that there are nice little rubber grommets where we can feed them through from the back. And I'm gonna start with the easiest one, the really big one. So just feed him through one of these slots. All right, so he came through here, and there's only one place he plugs in right here. And as always, you have to make sure that this clip is out here on the outside so that it hooks onto this tab here. So we'll carefully line him up and snap it into place. Make sure you press it all the way in. And you should hear this snap over there. All right, next we're gonna plug in the CPU cables, and our 8-pin connector is down here, and there's a gap under here, so I'm gonna slide the power cable through here. And this one also has a 4-pin connector, so I'm gonna go ahead and use 2 cables, one with the 8-pin and then break the other one in half with the 4-pin. They say that this is optional, but if you overclock it or do some other stuff, it uses this. So let's go ahead and connect them both since we have them. And make sure the little tabs are on the bottom so that they can snap in. All right, there's the first 2. And I plugged another one in and tucked the unused 4 pins out of the way. It's finally time to install this monster graphics card. I've always heard that you're supposed to do the highest PCIe slot on your motherboard for best performance. So that means the black one. It's interesting that there's a silver and a black one on here. I'm not too sure why that is. If you guys know, please tell us in the comments below. Also, you can see right here, if you were gonna install an M.2 Wi-Fi chip, that's the place to do it right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and remove the top 2 covers up here because this is a double slot bay. Okay, just kidding. I'm gonna be putting it in the other slot because if I try to put it in this slot here, this bay lines up here, and then I don't have any place to put the other one. So that's the only way it fits in this case. All right, so you just push the card into the slot, and once you push it in far enough, the little black tab there will pop up and lock it into place. So if you need to get it out, you push that down to release it. And I'll take the thumb screw that had this plate on there, insert it back into here to hold these in place. All right, let's power this thing up. So as you can see, it has an 8-pin and a 6-pin connector. And let's plan ahead and bring our power through over there. So the PCIe cable that we plugged into the power supply has an 8-pin connection, as well as another 8 or 6-pin connection. It's modular like that, so this will work perfectly. Just gonna feed it through here. And on the other side, we're gonna plug them in. Might require a hand on each side of this when you're pressing them in. Just be gentle, don't damage your card, but make sure they are all the way in. On the face of this case, we have our cool little Rio Toro guy, and there's a cable that runs down to it. And it's actually just a SATA cable, so just plug it into the SATA power, the same one that we use for the hard drive. All right, guys, that should be everything plugged in except for our main power cable, and then we can plug it into the wall and turn it on. Go ahead and connect a monitor to your HDMI here. They say not to use the display ports until you install drivers, so just use HDMI, hook up a mouse and keyboard, and turn it on. Make sure that it boots up to nothing. The next step is going to be installing an operating system, so I'm not going to cover that, but this is the build. Of course, for cable management, you probably want to make this look nicer, tuck up your cables, tie them together. The Morpheus case does have some nice cable management on the back of it. It has some built-in little Velcro straps and some places to tuck your cable away. So I will make this nice and neat, put the covers back on it. All right, I'm feeling brave. I got it plugged in. Let's turn it on, see what happens for the first time. Ooh, I got some pretty lights. All right, let's see if the power button works. Oh, that's promising. Got beautiful fans. Got our CPU fan working. We got our RAM glowing. Oh yeah. Looks like everything is up and running. Oh, and most importantly, we got our Toro. Man, this thing is whisper quiet too. All right, I went back in after building this and got a little Wi-Fi M.2 module. So I'm gonna install that. So I pulled the graphics card out so that I could get to the little M2 Wi-Fi. So there's a little orange post right here that is going to line up with this little notch in it. So I think the orange part is like a little sticker. Yeah, just peel that off because it is covering a little screw hole. So the little Wi-Fi chip should come with a screw. Mine did. Here's mine with a little screw and a little bracket. So once that chip is in place, you just take the bracket, which is angled to go up over the back of it, and screw it down, and that will hold that in place. And I'm gonna go ahead and stick my graphics card back in. To go along with this build, we have 2 more items from Rio Toro. First is their precision gaming mouse. So this is the one here. I'll have a link to this as well. It looks pretty awesome. And their precision gaming keyboard as well. It's a really smooth, quiet keyboard with customizable backlighting colors. So let's just take this thing out of the box real quick. We have a nice standard USB connector here. Nice secure foam packaging like all Rio Toro products. In the package you get a really cool branded wrist rest, as well as a user manual. In the top right corner you have your typical media and volume keys and standard height adjustments on the back. And we can take the mouse out. This thing looks and feels really cool. It's very smooth on the top, very easy buttons, and on the sides you have a little more like a kind of rubber grip. And just like the keyboard, it's got a really nice quality cord. Oh yeah, this thing is super cool. All right, that's it. You built a PC with the Rio Toro Morpheus case. Congratulations. Hope this video was helpful. If it was, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check out the description for links for where you can get this stuff. And don't forget to use that Rio Toro code. All right, guys, appreciate you watching. I'll see you in the next video.